guys, Allison here at The Bored Housewife. Thank you so much for joining me for another week's episode of The Bored Housewife. I really appreciate everybody who has been subscribing, liking, commenting, visiting my social media pages. All of it helps me out, and I just continue to encourage you to share if this is something that you really like, just to help me out and keep me going doing this. But this week's episode I think is going to be pretty fun. So I'm looking at the entertainment industry, which is very near and dear to my heart, which many of you know if you've listened or watched any of the past episodes. I used to work in film and television, and I also at one point was trying to be a dancer. So I definitely have a lot of experience on that side of things. But something that struck me for a really long time, this is not a new concept for me at all, but I was reading The Art of Living, which I'm going to be working out of again today, and there is a passage that I'm going to read to you that inspired this conversation, and it's basically like, where is entertainment going? And I know there's been a lot of talk about pop culture and the influence of it in our society, and I'm not getting into politics at all. This is just my reference, my opinion, my observations, and they are not politically motivated at all, so I just want to be clear about that. But it's interesting the sort of trajectory that our entertainment value is going, and especially as we get more and more things on our smartphones and smaller handheld devices, the content seems to be getting cheaper and cheaper, and so yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. Anyways, so I have a French 75 here. I'll tell you the cocktail recipe in a moment. But yeah, these are very near and dear to my heart. A lot of good times drinking French 75s. But anyways, grab your beverage of choice, grab your French 75, whatever you got. And cheers, guys. Let's have some fun. Okay, so first things first, the cocktail of the hour. This is a French 75. Real quick, the ingredients. I used an ounce and a half, one shot of gin. You can use vodka as well, but I prefer the more floral aspects of gin. I think it complements the sparkling really well. So you do one shot of gin. You do half a squeezed lemon, a few dashes of simple syrup just to kind of cut the citrus a little bit. And then I stir that up and then poured it into a cocktail glass and topped it with champagne. You can also serve this in a flute, in a champagne flute. You could also serve it in a coup. I've been desperately seeking for some vintage glasses. The coup glasses, they're like a little, they're kind of like a round little bowl almost, but they're very delicate looking. Supposedly they're modeled off of Marie Antoinette's breast. I don't know if that's a true story or not, but it seems about right? But anyways, I just think they're so pretty, and I love drinking out of them, but I can't find any champagne glasses. I think probably because they're so delicate. They probably broke so easily. But anyway, so I decided to serve mine in a martini glass today because I didn't feel like drinking it out of a flute. So I used to drink these a lot during that jazz era, is what I call it. In my early 20s, I was super into, and I still do, I love it. But there was an amazing jazz scene in New York City, and I would just go all over the city to different jazz clubs and some just really interesting venues, and I would typically drink one of these. So, anyways, cheers, guys. I hope you like it, and yeah, let's get on with the episode. Okay, so I'm going to start it off with reading the passage because I think once I read the passage, it's just going to unfold the rest of the ideas more. So this is on page 53 of The Art of Living. So most of what passes for legitimate entertainment is inferior or foolish and only caters to or exploits people's weaknesses. Avoid being one of the mob who indulges in such pastimes. Your life is too short and you have important things to do. Be discriminating about what images and ideas you permit into your mind. If you yourself don't choose what thoughts and images you expose yourself to, somebody else will, and their motives may not be the highest. It is the easiest thing in the world to slide imperceptibly into vulgarity, but there's no need for that to happen if you determine not to waste your time and attention on mindless pap. Okay. So basically, a few things that this passage is saying is, it's so easy to slip into entertainment, to find things funny or interesting or whatever that's below us, right? And, fart jokes, all right? Let's just throw it out there. Like, fart jokes are pretty basic. Like, they're very juvenile. Are they still funny? Yeah, they're hilarious. Fart jokes are so funny, okay? But, people getting hurt, like, think of Jackass, that sort of thing. Like, that's very funny, but it's extremely simple. It's not expanding your horizons or anything like that, right? It's just plain dumb stupidness, okay? The other thing that it's saying here is entertainment that we consume could also influence us without us really realizing it. So what sort of things are you watching or consuming or listening to? And what kind of sort of influence is it having on you? Is it kind of making you question certain things about yourself, or thinking like, I've had this standard for this sort of thing in my life, but now there's all this other stuff around it, and I feel like, I can lower my standard a little bit because it's almost like they're kind of making it the new normal sort of thing. I hate that term. I hate it so much. But, making it more acceptable in society by talking about it. So, is this entertainment, influencing you to maybe change your morals or values, sorts of things like that. So what I think is interesting with this is I don't think a lot of us really think about entertainment in this sort of aspect as to, what am I consuming and how is it affecting my life sort of thing. I've thought about it for a while because I've noticed for a long time that there's this trend of, we're just going to take movies, for instance. Like, how many remakes are they making, right? Like, the storylines of things are really simple and not very good. And if they didn't have all of the theatrics and like crazy special effects and everything, a lot of these movies would fall to the wayside because they wouldn't be able to stand alone on their own because the stories aren't there. They're not written well enough. So I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I've always kind of thought like, my goal is to elevate the mainstream, but I just don't think that that's where we're going in that direction. I think as we continue to evolve, I think the entertainment value is just going to get cheaper and more basic. And I have a lot to say about this, but I think that, and I'm not necessarily talking down on it, okay? Like, I totally get, like, I watch reruns of the same shows all the fucking time, and I do it because I just want something mindless. Like, I need to clean the house or I need to do other things, but I like having noise and I don't always want to listen to music. So having a show in the background that I've watched 5 or 6 times already, not even kidding, is kind of nice because it's like familiar voices. I can picture what's going on without having to actually like focus. And if I do stop to like take a break or something and like look at the TV, I know exactly where they're at. I don't have to like be like, oh, I missed a whole chunk of this thing. So I think that there is a time and place for the kind of silliness and the more basic, simplistic ideas and stuff in entertainment. But as a whole, like, are you doing more than that? Are you expanding your horizon beyond just like what the new popular movie is, what the new pop song is, what the viral video is? And so it's like that's the thing that we need to kind of take a wider look at. So the first idea that I want to kind of talk about through this passage is how entertainment can influence us. And I think it's been talked about quite a bit as of recently, just because of like, the political climate that we have and people, having opinions on both sides of the aisle of like what's morally right and wrong, and how that's being projected through like our mainstream like entertainment. I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to let you guys decide. But my comment is just stay open-minded to when you are watching or listening or looking at these things. Because I think that, like, sometimes there are cool aspects and they can be thought-provoking. That doesn't mean that you have to change your mind on it. So I find myself sometimes, like, hearing a really great speech or something, and the person who is the speech maker is very eloquent and very good with their words, unlike me. And they say things in a certain way, and you're like, wow, that's really amazing. That sounds awesome, But then if you really break down what they're saying, and if you kind of like look in between the lines, same with like a movie or same with a song or something, like really concentrate on what they're saying. If it's just a good beat to a song and you just like dancing to it, because I'm like that, I just like to sort of I'll listen to a song like 10 times before I actually listen to the lyrics. And then after I hear the lyrics, if I'm like, man, those aren't really great lyrics, but I don't care, I like the song because of the beat, that's one thing, whatever. But I think it's about staying open-minded. And I say this because in the past, even our own country has used entertainment as a propaganda move. So if you watch movies from like World War II and World War I, they were really trying to sell war bombs at the time. They needed money to, put into our military and take care of our troops overseas. So there's one movie that I can think of off the top of my head that's called Holiday Inn. It's with Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire. And there's this whole section of, they go through the holidays and do little pieces on each holiday. Some of the holidays nowadays are a little controversial, but it's an old movie, whatever. We're going to look past that. But they do one for 4th of July, and I think it's 4th of July. And it's this whole spectacular thing, and they show troops, like, they don't even hardly do as much of the dancing and singing. It's like they just took that portion of the movie to, like, dedicate it to America, which is pretty cool because you don't see that as much these days. But it's like, back then we can look at it, and it's, like, super obvious to us now because we've gotten used to certain, like, marketing tools and different things like that. But at that time, it was like, well, this is just a really patriotic piece within the film. So I think it's important to kind of look at that because, like, what's the motivation behind the film? What's the real message behind the song? What is this thing that you're going, to the theater to watch this play? Like, what is their main message? And I think it's great to sort of, like, take in different ideas and then, but don't lose sight of who you are while you're consuming these things. Like, don't, have this certain, idea in your moral code, but then you go and, see this play that is something completely opposite from it. And I think it's great to challenge our ideas. But then if you start to feel yourself sort of swaying, figure out what that is. Is that actually how you feel? Is that, did you get a new piece of information? Look into that piece of information to make sure that's correct. And then, move forward from there. I think art in general can be an amazing way to provoke thought and change and definitely influence people. And, myself, that's something that I've always wanted to do. I was like, how can I get my ideas into the mainstream? Because I want to influence. I want to help people think a certain way. But, sometimes maybe that's not the right course. Maybe sometimes it's just about entertainment. Maybe sometimes it's maybe your stuff just isn't mainstream, which is something that I'm kind of maybe realizing about myself. Another thing that I was kind of reading when I was thinking about this, which is part of, again, the whole like influence of it and what entertainment means to us, is a lot of times, we have all these different things in our society that's very regulated. Like, our curriculums at school are very regulated. What is appropriate to say at work or dress or act is regulated. There's, certain societal things that we do that are just, these are good manners sort of things that are regulated. And you have all these different things. But then when it comes to entertainment, it's kind of a free-for-all. And there is criticism, if this is good or bad or whatever. But with every criticism of bad, there's probably one that it's good too. Like, people, even if the mass majority is like, no, this isn't a great movie, you're still going to have people out there and they're going to be like, I thought that was the best movie ever, because it's all opinion. And it's hard to say, looking at an artistic thing, like this is good and that is bad, because it's all opinion based. So I think our entertainment value kind of gets away with a lot more because there isn't a lot of checks and balances, other than like, if it doesn't, the only real thing is if it like is very offensive, which nowadays tends to be more than not. You can offend people every corner you take. But overall, like, most people can accept that you're like expressing yourself or being artistic, and they'll just, either like you or not like you. So it's kind of interesting how our art kind of escapes a lot of the same things that like regular society doesn't. And something that I've thought about before as well is like the artists themselves. I'm not going to name any names, but we all know different cases of artistic people within our mainstream media and entertainment that, have certain faults about them and have done, horrible things in their life, and they get a pass almost because they've created these wonderful things. And I think a lot of times artistic people can be kind of troubled people. I think that, having certain aspects of your personality and your mindset might contribute to that, and then add like a buttload of money on top of it. You feel so powerful and untouchable, and nobody else can do what you do, sort of thing. And you lose all of your like humbleness, I guess. I don't know what better way to say that, but it's like these people kind of take advantage of the position that they're in. So I've always like kind of struggled with that, because there might be a movie or a song or something that I like made from somebody who's gotten acquisitions against them, and it's like, what do you do at that point? Do you not like that stuff anymore? Is it still okay to like it? And even still, where it's hard to blame people once we've even caught them in the act, once they've been accused of it. It's extremely hard to then step back and be like, oh my God, but this person made these amazing things. Like, how could they be a horrible person, you know? So I think that's another level of it as well. Like, we kind of, not only do we give a pass to the art, but we also give a pass to the people that are making it, because they're doing this thing that nobody else can do. And, we want to continue to see them do this really cool thing. I mean, I think it's kind of like with athletes and stuff too, even can be pulled into that. It's like, you have this incredible talent, musicians, whatever, and, to find out that you're kind of like a creep or, bad person really sucks, because it's like, well, society says that we're not supposed to like you anymore because you did this, but you've also did this other really cool thing. And so it kind of is like, ooh, what do you do from there? How, like, where's the line? So this next example I'm going to give is kind of example that a friend of mine told, and I am totally going to butcher it 100%, but I think you guys will get the gist. Also in this next section, these are just all my personal observations and things that I've learned over time. There is no credential to this. This is just my thinking on the scenario, and I don't really have any proof or anything. It's just an idea that I'm throwing out, and if you want to take this and continue to research on it more, by all means, please let me know what you find out. I'd love to hear about it. But yeah, so that's what this next section is about. So my friend told me this story about the jazz era. And so, early jazz era is definitely playing in public venues. Then, the invention of radio is made. So you're having people listening to the radio, and you have these these new jazz standards. Well, I guess even the Victrola was created before that. So you had little kind of records or cylinder record things. Where now these sorts of things can be produced and recorded and kind of given to the masses, whatever. So, you had this era where people just had very little access to anything. So whatever was made, and then that's all they had. They didn't have all the choices that we have today. So as that progressed, and then now movies are being made, and more elements are being brought into entertainment and all of that, outside of just you can go out to get it, you can be in your home to get it, now you can watch it in a film, whatever it is. Well, I guess during World War II, you had a lot of musicians that were, kind of just holed up in their apartment. There wasn't a lot of going out or doing things or whatever. And they started to create this kind of new wave jazz. That's that bippity bop bop dee da dee da da. That's my new wave jazz, But, they created this really elevated jazz, and, people didn't care for it. They wanted the standards, they wanted the songs that they could sing to. It was almost like they tried to take, jazz music to another level, and obviously some people did like it. I like it. I think it's great. But for the average person, it just really wasn't what they were looking for. And so, some of those musicians kind of went by the wayside, or just kind of fit into their own little niche, they weren't as mainstream as what you had in the early 19th century when people had their radios and stuff that they were listening to. So what I think is really interesting about that story is you had this group of people that were trying to elevate the mainstream, and we're trying to take it to the next level. And the people are like, no, we don't want that. We want our songs that we can sing to back. And so what I think is interesting is when you think all the way back, at some point when we're evolved societies, art and reading and all of that sort of stuff were for the kings and queens, right? And the peasants, they were just there to work. I'm sure they had their forms of entertainment. I'm sure that's where a lot of folklore sort of stuff comes from. You couldn't read or write, but you could tell stories by word of mouth and all of that. So you had that kind of entertainment, but you have these very divided, aspects of entertainment where you have these like beautiful portraits and, just stunning artwork and music played on like really, beautiful pianos and expensive instruments and all this sorts of thing. You have books that you can read from, and also, maybe you can afford to go see a play, whatever that is. And then you have another level where the masses are just kind of basic. They're going to tell stories that have been passed down. If they are artistic in any way, I'm not sure what that probably would have looked like, but, could it have rivaled? Maybe, but it's not going to be in the same environment, right? Then as we move along throughout, human history, then it's like, things can start being more mass produced. People can now read. We get the invention of the radio, then we get the invention of film. Now what is that bringing? And it just looks like to me, as things become more mass produced, instead of us like holding higher levels for this more elevated culture to bring to the masses, there's still like a divide. So it's like, even still today, the rich, they get to enjoy, really prestigious artwork in their home. Intellectual people tend to like the more heady movies and like, interesting sort of films, where the masses are like, more into going to the movies and seeing like a cool action film, or hearing whatever the like newest song is on the radio, whatever is more easily accessible to them. And so I think about that, and I guess it's okay, but it kind of is frustrating to me because this cycle of all of that just continues to divide. And I think with the continuation of like having, content in our hands, being able to look on our phones and see stuff, and you guys might be watching this from your phone or whatever. I'm making this with my phone. It's cheap and it's not well produced. And there's some beauty in that, because me, as just a nobody who has a cell phone, can now make stuff and talk about it on the internet. And I try to be very pure and, realistic and have some value to what I'm saying. I'm not trying to just come out here and talk about fucking shit. I'm trying to give something to the masses that might elevate and open people's minds that they hadn't thought of before or ever been like introduced to. But not everybody's doing that. I mean, I think I see the stuff that I watch on social media, and it's so easily consumed and it's so stupid. Half of the time I'm hearing the same songs, I'm seeing the same jokes repeated. You get these viral trends going that everyone does, and I've done them too. And it's like, yeah, sure, you might get a lot of like laughs or likes or comments on it, or a lot of views even, but it's like, what's all of that for? It's kind of silly. And so, like, I'm not really, like, other than maybe giving somebody a chuckle and making them, like, feel good throughout their day, or at least for a few minutes of their day, like, what else is this actually giving them? And so I think that's kind of, like, one of my biggest issues is just, like, here we have these opportunities. Like, we have museums all over this country with amazing artwork that now the masses can go to and can experience. But so many people choose not to. There's museums where you can go and learn things, but people choose not to. There's some really incredible films that will be made, but people don't want to watch those because they take too much concentration. Or the production value, isn't like the newest blockbuster. The new songs, like, instead of going, and listening to like a really well-performed piece or really, new interesting sort of technique someone might use, we're just going to go ahead and continue to listen to pop music. Now, I'm guilty of all this too, and like I was saying earlier, but I think it's a little bit about balance. I think it's about allowing ourselves to have some of that mainstream and it's fun and it's easy and it's simple, and even though it feels kind of cheap sometimes that's just what we need. Our lives are so busy, they're so hectic. It's just kind of, you just want to sit there, and you don't want to sit in silence because you don't want to be with your thoughts. But it's like, it's just really easy to digest. And so, that's great. But then other times, like, what are you doing? Like, are you reading another stupid self-help book, or are you reading something that could actually give you value and meaning in your life? Are you listening to the newest Taylor Swift song? Or, no offense, I like Taylor Swift, but, are you listening to her, or are you maybe looking outside of the box a little bit? Are you listening to, like, a new piece of classical music, or trying something different, So I think that's something to keep in mind, because it's like we have all these opportunities now to elevate ourselves and to, be even more open-minded and be influenced in so many other ways that we didn't even realize because of all of the entertainment value that's out there. So let's not try to get stuck in bubbles, I guess, because just because it's easy to consume and it's right there on your TV or it's right there on your phone, maybe it's good to limit yourself. And even on our phones, like, you can find stuff like my podcast that's talking about bigger ideas and not just a funny fart joke, So to piggyback off of, the self-help book thing that I just brought up, and then also to wrap it up, I think these are all my observations. This isn't anything, like, I haven't done a study. I don't know if this is true or not. You might be sitting there being like, Allison, that's not true at all. It's just my observation, and so I'm going to give you guys something to think about. But I see us all grasping for inspiration, grasping for meaning and purpose in our life, and I think entertainment is a great way to do that. I watched a few movies the other day, and I used to watch movies all the time. I love indie films, especially, and foreign films, and when I lived in New York, I would go on a regular basis to see these movies. And whether they were great or not, they just usually had a really cool perspective, and again, they're not the mainstream, and so it's not just like, oh, this is the big blockbuster. There was, like, more story and purposeful content, I felt like, than just, trying to make a buck, basically. And so money ruins everything, right? Don't get me wrong, I love money, but it makes everything so cheap. But anyways, so I used to do this all the time, and now I feel really disappointed in myself because it's almost like a chore to watch some of those movies, because it's like they're so thought-provoking and they make my head go in so many different directions, which is awesome and what they're supposed to do. But for some reason I feel spent when that happens, and it's like, I need to get out of my head again, and I have so much to uncover and figure out from these last 3 years. And kind of getting myself back a little bit. But that is another day, another topic, maybe not at all. That's just something for me to figure out. But when I watched these few films the other day, it was just so cool to see something different, and it was really refreshing and, again, thought-provoking. So what I'm getting at here is, we're trying to look for all of these ways to inspire and help us get on track and motivate us and do all these things, but yet we're still, consuming the same basic, boring bullshit all the time. So, if you're in a place where you feel uninspired or not motivated and you're, looking for things, look outside of what the basic is. Look outside of whatever this mainstream entertainment is. Look for a movie that, didn't, wasn't a blockbuster hit like opening weekend. Look for a new book that, um, you know, maybe someone suggested to you and isn't on like New York Times bestsellers list. Like, look for some new music that, isn't in your current repertoire of things that you listen to. Go to a museum if that's not something you usually do. Um, you know, Go even on a hike. Nature is beautiful. I think hiking and exercise are definitely forms of entertainment. Not only are they good for your body, but it's like, gets you thinking and in nature and seeing things beautifully in the world as they are, and which is super neat. And even do a puzzle. Puzzles are fun. As I've gotten older, I'm like super super into puzzles now. I think they're just so cool. They just get your mind thinking in a different way, and I get super focused on it. I'm like, I gotta finish this puzzle. But it's fun because it's like, it's not just, again, consuming bullshit, stupid crap. And we know what that is. We all know what the crap is. And sometimes the crap is really fun. But my point is, maybe it's time to look for some better crap. Maybe it's time to think back to, how privileged we are to live in a world where we get to see pieces of artwork that only kings and queens used to get to see at one point. We get to read stories, we get to see plays that were only for the elite. And, to think that maybe there's still a divide in some way or another, what's going to push you to outside of your box a little bit and thinking about this world in a way that's, not only good for your sake and your morals and your values, but, is it going to influence you in a positive way? Is it going to influence you in a negative way? Yeah, I just think it's good to try different things and not always be on the same path for everything. I do think a lot of our mainstream entertainment is very cheap and easy. Every once in a while you get something that's kind of thought-provoking, but like, I'll take the Avengers movies, for instance. I think they are incredibly entertaining films. They're super fun to watch, but there is absolutely no value in those films. Those films do not make me wake up and contemplate anything. Some of the movies I watched the other day that were more indie films, I went to bed and had all these cool dreams. They just created scenarios that, you just don't think about on a regular basis. And so even I was listening to some classical music. I hadn't listened to classical music in a while. And I got a brand new idea of something that I could try on my social media. I've been having a really hard time, as you all know, because I keep talking about it, how hard social media is for me. And I kind of realized, I'm like, I'm struggling because I'm trying to do these mainstream ideas, and I'm not mainstream. I am aloof and weird and different, and that's totally fine. But trying to force myself into a world that I don't really fit into on that level isn't working, and it's making it really difficult for me. So my social media presence is going to be a little less, but I'm trying to figure some stuff out, and I'm hoping by the time we get settled in Okinawa, I'll have some really good ideas that I can start sharing with you guys. But in the meantime, I'm just kind of rolling with stuff, but I'm tired of the entertainment bullshit. There's just too much stupid crap. It's fun, I get it, but sometimes we need a little bit more than that. So anyways, cheers, guys. If you like this episode, please subscribe, please comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you've been watching, what you're listening to, if you felt certain things like this as well. Maybe you've not thought of this before. Start really paying attention to what you're watching and listening to and how that's affecting your life. Like, sometimes even, I got in this a little bit with the last episode, but like, the reality TV that's out there, like, it can be so negative sometimes. So if you're feeling and struggling really hard with like negativity and other things in your life, switch it up. switch up what you're watching and consuming. Put some more positive aspects into your daily life because, it's just going to make it better. So, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching another episode. And yeah, cheers. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.